Good night, friends in Indonesia. Thank you for joining the Beta Talks. And we are very honored that Mr. Philip Kinsella, an author of books about UFOs, is now joining with us. Thank you, Mr. Philip Kinsella.
Thank you.
And yeah, and in Beta Talks, we usually discussing about UFO and aliens.
Yes.
And we talking with people who encountered with UFO or meet
Yes.
with the aliens.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
it is very very honored that you can join with us.
Well,
So yeah,
yeah. The honor's all mine. And, I think it's a phenomena that we still don't know what we're dealing with. I mean,
yes,
with myself, I am no one of significance. We're all important as far as I'm concerned. And I had no wish really to get involved in this. But when you have been touched by the singularity within the level that I have, and certainly at very, very, very close range or up close and personal, as I would call it, you're then met with the rebuff of a system that we serve that tells you that they don't exist, that UFOs don't exist. And the same with anything to do with life after death, for instance, consciousness. So I was really curious to find out, well, this has happened to me, so either I must be lying, or I'm delusional, or the system that we serve is lying. And of course, this was very early within my years. And we find that we do live by a system which has lied to us continuously and brings no transparency whatsoever to the subject of ufology. And as you know, all of you good people know that there is this dealing with the Senate at the Pentagon at the moment with regards to David Grush.
yes,
And all of this, that they're trying so hard to maintain their silence. So why is this the case? Why is it that the UFO phenomena has been subjugated in terms of our mental understanding? And I think the reason behind this is because we're dealing with something that is far more than what we have been sold in terms of just dealing with aliens coming from another planet and, they're here to bring world peace to the planet. Well, that hasn't happened. None of that's occurred yet. No help has been forthcoming. So this is where we stand at the moment with regards to the UFO stroke alien phenomenon. Yeah.
yeah. But as far as we know that the UFO or the aliens that they're talking in Congress is quite different with what we we saw or what we experienced in around 1978, 1970s or 1980s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think and feel that the shock of this, David Grush did state, that, it was quite disturbing. I think they were talking in terms of the pilots that are obviously in cryogenic freeze. Could be very disturbing, I suppose. But the phenomena is very strange because it seems to mold within our mythology. It seems to mold
Yes.
within our consciousness. And this is where a lot of the research that I've done in terms of the greys, as they are known within UFO literature. And I know I wanted to experience one aspect of that and to take my research in a theoretical level to try and find out what these beings were and what they were after, and why there is indiscrepancies with regards to this so-called physical contact. Because as we're aware, when the UFO or any form of UAP experience comes in close range to an individual, there is an overriding of consciousness. So this is very interesting, I think, from a speculative point of view in terms of what we actually may be dealing with.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
It is. Yeah. I also said to Mr. Philip Mantle that I think the UFO relate with our consciousness and our
Mm.
culture. and our
Yes,
culture.
that's right. And I've already said in most of my works that, you know, if you take the mobile phone, just giving an example here, people think that the hardware is actually the phone. Well, the phone is actually the signal that we can't see.
Yes.
And I think we as sentient beings operate in the same way, where consciousness permeates our biological system. And like a phone, records, transmits, and receives information. And what's interesting is that it's not just about the UFO, UAP phenomena, which are the same thing here. I think we have to bring into the fray other aspects that have been continuously denied us. And this is why I think within the annals of ufology, going back, as you quite rightfully said, within the 50s, 60s, 70s, there's been no real transparency or connection to be made with regards to the phenomena at hand, because we're no nearer in truly establishing what we're dealing with. I think now most researchers are having to look beyond the restricted viewpoint and consider other areas that may interconnect and interlink with what we're dealing with. So I think we're dealing with a lot more than just spacemen coming from another planet. And there are several examples that we can use in terms of our understanding of why this is the case, certainly within other elements of the paranormal. So I think with all of you, that's on here, I fully respect you know, in terms of your understanding. And this is another thing that we have to be very careful about, because everyone has their own unique individual belief system. And this is an area where if you overstep someone's belief system, then you're going to upset them. This is why I'm very open to all forms of speculation in terms of what we may be dealing with, and not just one singularity at that. So all of you have your own beliefs, your own understanding of what you may see this phenomena as. And I think that the phenomena represents itself on a singular personal level of integration. That means to say that it's coming into you and around you on how you view that reality, because everyone's trying to squeeze it into the same box and it just won't fit.
Yeah. Is is that way that you entitled your book with the title Terrestrial Trespasser,
Mhm.
or maybe,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Well, because in essence, if we look at this, and giving a few brief examples of these so-called greys, I mean, you know, whatever they are, we can only speculate. But most people see them as like physical entities, and this is the problem. And then there are accounts where they can come through walls and doors of houses. My research or my theoretical model suggests that these beings are operating on a higher frequency of awareness or vibrational energy frequency, which is separate from ours. But when they come in to our reality, they have to lower themselves so that they can make a connection with us. Rather like a deep sea diver needs the equipment to survive under the sea, and no different from an astronaut that needs to wear a spacesuit when dealing with a hazardous confrontation of space itself, which is full of radiation and all sorts of dangerous things. So, and also there are many other aspects that we've looked at in terms of communication and how they communicate with individuals. And just to briefly state, Terrestrial Trespassers, most people, the title of the book is there's a reason behind that, because most people assume within their mind that the greys are here to help our species and it's all love and light. But I am not dismissing that. But a lot of the accounts that we hear of is where they come in and they override the individual's sense of reality. They are taking on board a so-called craft, where there is a sense of timelessness. Communication is done via telepathy. And I believe that when you're in their presence, when you're connected with them, that anything they do with you will invariably affect your physical form. Now, this is where a lot of my research has kind of like made parallels between the near-death experience and the abduction phenomena. There seems to be parallels between the two. I'm not saying that the greys are dead. What I'm saying is that they operate on an interdimensional level of reality. So, and they come in and they intrude into our lives. And, you know, most people say, well, it's because, you know, it's something that we perhaps have written in our life chart on the other side, or no, rubbish. I don't believe that. So a lot of the reports, the real solid reports that come through, are very highly disturbing in terms of what these greys may represent and what they're after, because they're not interested in you or me. They're interested in what they can get from us. And
Yes.
certainly I've been linked with a lot of other researchers who are very much into that mindset, as it were.
Yes. So this dimensional beings, or we can say alien, is interesting with what can they get from us.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I'll give you an example. What is it that they want from us? What are they after? Why do they secrete themselves in the very shadows where there's no real evidence or proof of their originality? Let's face it, there isn't. If you good souls over there can tell me where they're all hanging out, I'll go down the bar and go meet them. I do have a sense of humor. If you can tell me where they're all hanging out, I'll be there to meet them. But they secrete themselves within the mind, in the mind of the abductee. Um, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because the greys come across to me and many others as a species that cannot themselves reproduce. Now, what's interesting is, why are they interested in some form of replication or reproductive program? Why is that? And why do the greys come across as rather like a blank canvas, as though they are just, they don't understand about love, of taste, of smell, of aging? It's like they come from a dimension where there's none of these qualities. And they're very interested in, I think, how we as the human tick. And what makes us what we are. And I think this may have a lot to do with our genesis. Perhaps they're interested to know where we come from, where we derive from. So these are certain questions we have to ask when you know, looking at what they are and what they seem to represent, because they come across rather like a blank canvas. Are we dealing with the dead? Are we dealing with interdimensionals? Are we dealing with us from the future? Are we dealing with some kind of AI construct? All of these questions are open to all forms of speculation. But I think there's a lot more behind the greys than we know. But you'll get some researchers who will tell you what the greys are, the same with the reptilians and what high command they're in and what names they have. I don't deal with that. I think the rawness of the experience is where I go in to try and have a look on a theoretical level to try and establish, what are we dealing with?
Yeah. Maybe some of new guests here.
Yes.
The they don't know about your experience with the grace, and maybe would you tell us again what happened in 1979,
No,
maybe?
1989, that
Okay, okay.
was 1989, the winter of 1989. Well, you know, I try to move past that point now, because it was an area that really got me involved with the UFO research, because I wanted to find out what had happened, how it happened, and what these things were. Unfortunately, I suffered through the media cartel. Being very open and honest, coming forward didn't do me much favors, because you were laughed at and ridiculed. But what happened was that in the winter of 1989, I come back from work. It was about 7:15. I got the train from Bedford to Millbrook and walked a mile or so back home from the train. Got in through the door of the house. Now, our house then had a driveway, and we had the glass doors to the front. And then as I walked through the house, through to the hall, I then went through the glass door of the kitchen, which is quite large, and has a kitchen diner. And I left the kitchen door open. I was greeted by my dog and my twin brother Ronald, identical twin brother Ronald, and my sister, who was standing to my far left, and my brother was standing ahead of me, but his viewpoint was restricted because of the dining area. So he was looking at me, and I just laid back upon the counter, taking things in, just taking a moment to relax. A cup of coffee was being made, I think. But I had a full view of the hallway in front of me, and the dog was in front of the breakfast bar, and all of a sudden there was this very strange feeling, as though the atmosphere was changing. It became almost like electrified, and my brother suddenly froze, and he lifted his head up to the ceiling. And I'll never forget his words, and these are exactly what he said. He said, "There's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die." Well, there was no earthquake, and our maternal grandmother at that point was still very much alive. So it's almost as if he was being overridden by something, or this strange posture that he took was this electrical charge responsible for that. But when I looked out upon the hall, and I saw a light coming up to the driveway, and I thought at that point that our mother had arrived back home in her car, and I know, that she'd arrived home, but she wasn't due back until late that night. But this light intensified and started to connect with the glass doors. Everything's to do with doors and glass, this type of thing. And the light started to bend. It became intensified. And I'm looking at this thinking, well, this is impossible. Scientifically, light can't bend glass. But the glass seemed to be going backwards and forwards, like it was becoming soft or pliable. And then this very small being, 3 foot tall, clad entirely in black, very diminutive in terms of its body, but it had what I assumed was some type of black helmet on its head, like a motorcycle helmet. From my vantage point, it looked like the cranium was much bigger than the lower proportion to its body. And as it came through the door, it ran very quickly downstairs towards the left of where my brother and I had our study stroke bedroom, downstairs, because there was not the upper level as well. And then the light vanished, everything returned to normal. The dog was going crazy, and I was so stunned by this that I said, "There's an intruder in the house." And then I shouted, "There's an intruder in the house." And I picked up a knife from the drawer, and then I saw this thing dart very quickly from where it had disappeared across the hall and up the stairs. And it was just my brother had then snapped out of his so-called trance, and everything seemed to come alive again. And then we looked for this thing and we couldn't find it. And I remembered later on I was in shock because I'd never experienced anything like this. But it was then in the early hours of the morning, around about 3 o'clock in the morning, that the truly bizarre began to happen, because I would found myself floating on my back in the hall of directly where this thing had originally come through. So I'm on my back and my head is facing the kitchen door and I'm being pulled forward. So I'm consciously aware, but I can't move. But I'm able to go through the glass of the doors, and I'm wondering, well, this is not possible. How am I, as a biological entity floating on my back, able to get through solid matter? Well, I was pulled through the doors, through to the kitchen, through to the conservatory, and then out to the garden, because we had a big patio level where a pond was, and then you went further down the garden, we had an aviary there. And as I'm drawn outside, I'm then arched up into a standing position. I can't move, I can't do anything. And I'm a little bit shocked, because it's like, well, who's in control of me and what's going on? And in the sky are all these lights moving past very quickly. And I'm thinking, well, UFOs exist, they're here. I mean, what's the big problem? But there's one of these objects that's like a rustic silver, dark silvery, like a gray color, that's hanging in the sky. The others are moving, but this is not. It's big. And as soon as I clock it, I'm pulled up to it very quickly. You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster and you're just about to make that drop, your stomach goes. And then when I got closer and closer to it, bang, I then black out. The next part was the truly horrific part. And one which, let's just put it this way, which was the butt of many a joke. Let's just say that, because I then found myself in this dingy, dark type of medical room. There, I remembered that I was strapped to a bed, my legs and my chest and my arms, and it was dark. It was very hot, and there was some light coming directly in front of me to the left, so that it looked like there was an opening there. But from my vantage point, when I'm laying down, I'm a little bit shocked to find where I am, because I don't understand what I'm doing here. So I then look to my right, and there are these, what I can only describe as three reptilians. They're very tall, they're very powerful, and they seem to be in this kind of like denser steam, or this kind of like this area of, so anyway, it's like being in a sauna. And when I looked at them, I was so horrified that I knew at that point that this isn't happening, this cannot be happening. And I started to scream, and even more so because there was, and I felt a foreign implement that had been inserted into the lower abdominal region. I don't need to explain any more than that, but it felt organic within the stomach or lower bowel region. And I wanted it out because I didn't know what I was doing there, and I couldn't move. And of course, all I got was this total fear and lack of empathy from these things. And I just was terrified, and I started to scream, because if you find yourself in a situation that you have no idea what's going on, and then as I yelled and tried to get out of my restraints, the beings to the three of them, there was no communication from them. They just, I don't know where they went. And then of course, this thing that was in me was retracted mechanically, I believe. And there was this small gray that came forward. I wanted to get off wherever I was. And the gray just kind of like told me to dress and follow it. So I did. Around that corner to the left where the light was, that was actually a corridor, and we came to what I thought was a wall. There was lighting in there, but I couldn't see the source of the lighting. And when the wall that I thought we came to disappeared, it was an opening. Now there's some very interesting things I want you to consider here, because another researcher put the two together here, what I'm just about to explain. The truly bizarre occurred. So there's an opening, and it's a door. It just opened. I didn't even see it opening. It was just there. It was solid 1 minute and then open the next. And the grey is looking at me like, get out. And I started to get upset, because it's like, you want me to get out? We're at height. We are at a height, and I can see the village from this height. And I can see our house and our conservatory from that height. And it looks like it's going into the very early stages of morning. And I can see another smaller disc by our conservatory, a smaller disc by our conservatory. And I'm like, this is crazy. This isn't happening. So I feel this push, and then I'm coming down to the ground. There were two greys, one on one side, one on the other, that were to accompany me. I was told not to look at them, and I thought that's very strange because I've seen one back there. But when I came down to the ground, this is the last part now, there was one other grey standing in front of me underneath this other smaller thing. And the others, I think, had disappeared. And I'm standing in front of this grey. Now, this was truly horrific, because this grey was more humanized. He was about 4 foot tall. He was clad in a one-piece khaki uniform. He had I can still remember him, still see him clearly. He had knee-length boots. He had this pointed hat on his head that came round in a kind of like a very smart part to his uniform. And his face was very much angular, but his eyes were black, and his small protrusion from mouth and nose, very like 2 dots for a nose, but it had its arms folded. And it was scowling at me, like really angry with me. Like, you know, I don't know what I'd done. And I felt like where the solar plexus was, I felt like I'd been punched. And I wanted to hit it. I wanted to punch it, because I thought, well, you know, you've done this to me. I don't know where I am and what's going on. I want to punch you, but I couldn't move. And then I thought, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to tell me the answer. How on earth are you able to get me? And how on earth am I able to get through solid matter? And then he looked shocked, like this, and then he raised his head like this to the underneath of his craft, and he started to rasp in this unintelligible electronic voice. And at that point, I found myself being pulled back through the glass, and I could see him frozen through the kitchen, through the hall, and then bang into my bed. And then as soon as I woke up, I had a nosebleed. Now, I had to go and sort myself out. Now, in the morning, because I had been violated, my brother checked me all over, and we found 3 triangular marks behind my right ear. I suffered profuse nosebleeds to the right nostril. I had 3 marks on my right arm, and needless to say, I found it difficult to get about. We tried to take pictures of this with an instant developing Polaroid camera. Nothing came out. Now, what's interesting, think of this. What that Gray and another researcher, Pierre Sabac, made a parallel here. What my brother did in the very early stage of that, I won't say night because it was late evening, around about 7:15, 7:20, when he froze and he looked up and he said there's going to be an earthquake or Brahma's going to die. The Gray, the last Gray I saw, seemed to be mimicking what my brother had done. You see, so what happened was that he froze, looked up, and his voice was scrambled, as though whatever this phenomena was doing was scrambling reality, or there was some kind of connection on some level. Now, that's the major part of the abduction. But may I just point out to you that when this occurred, it was truly horrific. People, they tend to put it within their own category of thinking. But for me, I had no idea. I always assumed that, aliens were benevolent and very kind. I had no idea that this was how it was initiated. But then what happened was that I started to research because I wanted to find out myself what had occurred, why it had occurred, and where they came from, and why it was me. And this is what then led me within the study, not so much about my case, because I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm more interested in trying to gain access to the theoretical aspects with regards to the phenomena. So levels of high strangeness, the way that we've been sold this, tells us a completely different story. So we may be dealing with something that's part folklore, part old, ancient, an energy or force that's outside of our current level of reality. So that's what happened to me in terms of that experience. There were other major experiences not to do with abductions, although I believe that there were and had been 2 other abductions, but I can only report the build up to that and will not talk about something that I have no memory of, only the facts that I can deal with. That's how I work.
Uh, can I ask you several questions?
Yes.
When the last Gray you meet and he's like this and he looks
Yes,
like
correct.
angry,
Yes, correct.
and you ask the Gray, how do you did this to me, and
Correct.
something like that, and
Correct.
the Gray was shocked.
Yes, absolutely. It was almost as if it didn't understand, or it was surprised by my line of questioning. And that's the only thing I can think of, is that my question had shocked him, or he was not willing to give me the answer, because I thought, and this is another part that I did think within that state of awareness that I had been in when this abduction took place, I wanted proof, I wanted evidence, because I knew that what had happened to me was real. And I thought the only thing that I can ask him, this Gray, I felt it was male, although I can't prove that. It did look male, I suppose. What I wanted to ask him was, how on earth are you able to get me through solid matter? And I knew that if he would give me the answer to that, I could tell the people that this really happened to me, and this Gray would give me the answer to the question I'd asked. But nothing came. There was no exchange of any information at all, except a seeming scrambling of reality. So it's interesting, isn't it, with what he was doing and mimicked what my brother had been doing earlier. It's very uncanny and very strange. We still don't know what that was about, but it just seemed very strange that this occurred. So if anyone can work that one out, well, good luck.
So, do you think that the shocked expression of the gray indicated that the gray shocked with your question?
Yes. Yes, I think so, because I think the other part of this, and I've thought about this, Reza, is that normally most people who are in the presence of these so-called greys, or whatever they are, I mean, I suffered because I didn't understand about reptilians, and then I have people now suddenly telling me where they're from and their high command. I can't deal with that. I can't, or because we don't know. All I can report is facts. But I wondered whether or not, because I'm hard to control consciously, I can't be hypnotized. It's very hard for someone to take me into regression. And someone tried regression once, and this is all from memory. This is all from my own memory. I haven't had regression at all. Someone tried in later years to regress me, couldn't do it. So I wonder if the Grey was shocked that I was in command of my faculties and was rebelling. With regards to I want to know, because in most cases the abductee, as it's called, has no control over the facilitation of this communication. It's normally done from the Grey to the individual. But I think he was probably shocked by my line of questioning that I had actually fired that back at him, and then realized that their control, or whatever it was breaking on some level. I don't know. It's only a thought that I had. But he froze. It's almost as if like all of that reality froze, like they couldn't deal with it anymore. That is very interesting, isn't it? I think. Yeah. So it's possible that because I fought and I wanted to hit him, and I couldn't because I couldn't move, they had control of me there, but not in here. Because the communication, I believe, was done on a mental level. But when you're in that situation, you kind of like, it's kind of confusing because you're not sure if it's verbal or it's mental. It's strange, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you're speaking, it's like you're talking, but it's here. But his communication was non-existent. Except for the electronic rasp, and save for the Grey on board the craft that wanted me to dress. There was no, and follow it. There was no, it was all cold. It was all very, very cold, and no empathy, no understanding, no explanation, nothing. And of course, we are then left to pick up the pieces that have been scrambled within our lives. And you're met by a system, as I said before, that does not understand the truly highly complex levels of such experiences. So I believe that the way that the public have been sold this in terms of I do believe the crafts are physical. They perhaps can mold themselves into our reality from their dimension into ours very quickly. But there is other aspects of interdimensional connection that I believe is at play here.
Wow, it's very very interesting, Mr. Philip, and and then the grace mimicking your brothers.
Yes, that's
Brother.
correct. It's scary, isn't it? And of course, I didn't even put
Yes,
those
it's
bits.
scary.
I didn't even put those bits together. It was another researcher, a brilliant researcher who deals with ancient language. Pierre Sabac, his name is. He deals with ancient language and also a lot of ufology. And he put the pieces together by stating, "Did you not realize that what the Grey was doing was mimicking what your brother had been doing?" And I was so shocked. This is why I say to anyone out there that when you have an experience, you must only report exactly what happened, and be honest and truthful with regards to that. Because for many years after the experience, that was in 1989, in 1996, I came up with a theoretical model, a revolutionary speculation with regards to the Greys. So it didn't end with regards to the 1989 event. I wanted, and my mind was working out, what are these? where do they come from? So you can see that the seed was planted by them for me then to try and work out what we were dealing with and where they came from. So I think with a lot of people that go through these very bizarre experiences, it kind of changes. But another point I think which is very interesting is we have to ask ourselves, one of the key questions here, why is it that only certain geographical locations have more UFO sightings than other areas? If we take the United States of America, for instance, it is completely dogged with UFO sightings. And if you go to Britain and other main countries, the numbers seem to decrease rapidly. So I believe that we may be dealing with something that truly operates on an interdimensional level and has a very firm connection with human consciousness. And I have to state here that the force or the entities or the energy behind this seem to know us very, very well, don't they? They know the workings of the mind, the genetics, the material, all of this type of thing, but we know nothing, next to nothing about them. So I think we're dealing with an ancient force or an ancient intelligence that is very much interested in what we are, where we come from, and primarily where we're going as a species. And I think this also brings into the fray other aspects of consciousness, life after death, creation, and also to do with the antediluvian past as well too, which I think the system has not been clear about because we have been lied to, and most of our historical cultures and the happenings have been buried so that we can make no connection with regards to our past. So it's very frustrating, I think, in terms of any researcher, because it's not just studying the UFO phenomena or the alien phenomena. You find that this begins to open other areas of investigation.
Okay. So about the reptilians, did you meet them again?
No, never. No, not at all. No, that was the only one time. But may I just point out here, I wrote an article for a magazine about the experience and it was published. But then when I wrote the account within a book that was published by a publishing company, Kapelbaum Publishing Limited here in England, I believe that the book, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena that I wrote was published in 2009. And the publisher wanted to take out the reference to the reptilians because he assumed back then that there could be no parallels to be made between reptilians and grey aliens. And of course, the only way for me to have my book published was for that to be omitted. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just go along with it. But, years later now, I don't understand what these beings are. We hear a lot about them, but this is the thing within the UFO community. There's a big divide. Those that will tell you that they are all love and light, and others that will tell you where they come from and who is in charge of what. May I make it perfectly clear to all of you good people, I have no idea where they come from, what they want, or why they are here, but they were there. And all I can tell you is that it was truly horrific in nature. When you are met by the appearance of one of these things, there were 3 of them, all I got from them was no empathy. I was just a slab of meat. They weren't interested in me as an individual. So I don't know. I have no idea. And it's interesting, isn't it? I think with regards to these recent revelations, with regards to the Pentagon, in terms of David Grush's testimony, and of course George Knapp and Jeremy McLaughlin. I think that's the good man. I met him in America many years ago at a UFO conference, and the truly extraordinary shock with regards to, I think, the pilots. And I wonder what they look like. So it'd be interesting to see. And we do know that there is more than one species that look different. This is interesting. This is very, very interesting in terms of where they come from and if they're interconnected on some level or they're from different realities, which is really quite fantastic to believe when we are here now, you, me, and all your good people over there in your wonderful country, where we're just being told and filtered a very narrow part of all of this. So I think this is the shock. I wonder if some of those on ice that they have are reptilian. That would be very interesting, wouldn't it? You know, to see or to understand what they look like. So yes, it's very interesting. But where are they all coming from? This is this, and where are they hanging out?
Yeah, it's like asking their origin, and their origin is full of mystery. And
Mm.
what they want from us is also mystery.
Yes, that's right. Agreed. Absolutely, totally. But if we look into the phenomena, we are a species that reproduces. We come through the birthing channel.
Yeah, yeah.
We are born from perhaps source, the soul, like the signal going into a mobile phone. And if your phone dies, all that information is collected within the signal. I think with us as sentient human beings through consciousness, when we finished our recording here, that our soul or consciousness returns back to source. I think this is a major possibility in terms of what we represent, because if we just live and die, there's no point to anything. The universe then is just like, well, you know, what are we in? What are we contained in? These questions will send us all into a psychiatric ward if we try to dig too deep. But as I said before, it's interesting why these entities are coming to us and where exactly they're coming from. So our understanding of space flight, space travel is very cumbersome because we're looking at it in terms of fossil fuels of what we would use. But the big question is this that I don't understand. I can't get my head around this at all. I really can't. What is so terrible to believe that one, that we survive physical death after we finished our journey here, and two, that there are other life forms which exist beyond our level of reality? What is the big secret? What is the big mystery? What is the big problem with that? And the system that we serve is quite happy to promote a narrative that is wispy, ethereal in nature. Oh, you know, religious ideologies, which are important constructs to the individual, absolutely, but it's something you can't touch, it's there. And the scientific interpretation that's given on the major physical level is very much, well, it just all happened. It was chaos that brought about this situation. I don't understand. And I think this is why a lot of people now within the world are waking up to this fact that, hang on just a minute, there are things that don't add up here. It's not just about UFOs and aliens, it's also about what we represent on a biological level of reality, our origins, where we come from. And you know what? We still don't know. All we have is the Sunday school version, which is very loosely fitted within the evolutionary program. So, you know, as I said, these are areas which have, like you perhaps, and many of your other good folk out there are wanting to look into, wanting to progressively study and examine and explore, because we're not just dealing with one thing here, we're dealing with a multitude of complex issues. And the human, us as the human being, well, let's take a look at this, shall we? All of the beings that are reported, whether it be the greys or the reptilians, or you know, the mantis, or indeed the dogman, the werewolf, or indeed the Sasquatch, or indeed, they all communicate through the mind.
Yes, yes,
And
that's right.
yes, absolutely. And we as humans communicate
With
with
mouth.
verbally. That's right.
Yeah.
So we seem to be, as the human, totally removed through their reality, so different in terms of what we are and where we come from. So this is why we have to look at other areas of the paranormal to see where we can make those connections or those pieces that we can try and fit together. what are we dealing with? Where is this force coming from? Why are there so many of them that we can't seem to catch or hold? Or, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. There's the dogman. Oh, we've got the Sasquatch caged there, or we've got the greys there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the evidence that does come through in either crashed saucer reports or dead alien bodies, well, there is a secure unit by the military to do a cleanup operation. And it's interesting, isn't it, how these codes occur in desolate regions of the world. Very suspicious, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It is a big insight for us about
Yes.
about we are discussed now. Maybe one of participant want to asking to Mr.
By
Philip.
all means, please. Yes, that would be lovely. Yeah.
Here's from Mr. Gatot. Wait.
Okay, yes, so he's hello, how are you? You're interested in the
Okay.
alien gesture, yes?
Maybe Mr. Dwinanto want to say something,
Yes,
ask
please.
something.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Yes.
My name is Dwinanto from Jakarta. Nice to meet you, Mr.
And you as well, sir. Yes.
We in Indonesia also get a lot of information about experiences of encounters, like encounters with Greys, aliens, Nordic, and also reptilians. And apart from that, we have also experienced incidents such as UFO sightings, like in Battle of Los Angeles, which occurred in 1963 in the city of Surabaya. This means that alien encounters and abduction are a global incident. I want to ask you, what is your speculation regarding their agenda?
Yes, now that's very interesting and a very good question indeed. Well, this leads into postulation with regards to theoretical aspects. We don't know. But I remembered there's another author, a researcher called Steve Aspin. He wrote a book called Out of Time. And he recalls, I mean, he's a very brilliant man. He's come from a brilliant background. His father was a professor. And he remembered when he was going through his abduction that he asked the Grey why this was happening to him. And the Grey communicated back to him, rather bored, by stating, oh, it's because of your maternal grandmother. So he believes that there may be some kind of intergenerational connection link. We don't know what the Greys are after. There is speculation, however, that it's possible to assume that if they are a dying species, if they had cancelled themselves out to the act of cloning, they cannot reproduce. And they're interested in a program where reproduction with us is prominent. Maybe they're trying to recreate themselves from the ashes of their failed experimentation of survival. We don't know. But it's interesting, I think, that this may go deeper. We also have to look into a very uncomfortable area, a very difficult area to contemplate, and wonder whether or not that the dead, or those primarily on lower dimensions of reality, have found a way through to try and slingshot them into a material world through their subsequent damnation. Now, that's just another theory. I'm not stating that that is fact. We just have to look at alternative areas of what these things may be and where they come from. But we don't know. Obviously, they want something from us. As illustrated before, they're interested in what makes us tick as humans. They don't understand about taste, of color, of smell, of aging, of love, the very attributes that make you and I what we are. They are devoid of these. They don't understand them. And if they're coming from a timeless state of reality, what is it that they're interested in? And as I've said before, they appear through other reports to be interested in reproduction or the creation of some kind of hybridization being, part them, part us. Now, I've also speculated myself here that if we as a human species are at the end of our line, that we are ready to become extinct, then it is possible that these greys could even be some kind of architects that are wanting to create a new genus or species through us and them to survive elsewhere in the universe. This is another idea I came up with in terms of what they could be dealing with. So we don't know, but we can speculate as to that hypothesis. We have no idea. And we must also remember that the greys, when they abduct someone, they more or less lie to the individual. In a lot of cases, they lie to them. I think they're wanting some kind of emotional stimuli. They seem to make the retina scan. There's a connection between them and us on a conscious level. They're digging around within our memory, within our mindset, within our consciousness. And they seem to enter into our conscious realms, I think, as well, too, which is quite interesting. There's a very good point, sir. Very, very good point indeed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kinsella.
Thank you.
Mr. Philip, I have an experience, maybe like experience you ever had about the grace who confused with your confusion, with your question. So the experience like this, several years ago, I was confused about whether to buy a cell phone with a good camera or buy a mirrorless camera. That night, where the day when I confused and think a lot about that night I woke up because there was a voice calling my name, Reza, Reza, and the voice came in the downstairs. Several years ago, I slept in upstairs in my parents' house. So I came down to the stairs and saw my rich cousin. And she then asked me, should I buy a cell phone with a good camera or a mirrorless camera?
Oh.
And I was lost in thought, but realized something, Mr. Philip Kinsella, and I swear, in the name of God, this really happened. I was lost
Oh,
in
yeah.
thought, but realized something. My cousin didn't open her mouth, and when she spoke, uh, her voice like inside in my head.
I understand. Yes.
Then I asked her, why does your voice appear in my head? And why do you know about my confusion? And do you know why? Do you know what happened next? My cousin looked annoyed, and then I woke up. It's
Oh.
similar with your story, but
Yes,
it's
that's
not
correct.
grace, but it's human, like my cousin, who is rich and she is older than me, and yeah, she looked annoyed, like how did he know that I know my confusion, and yeah, she looks like annoyed with my question. That's
Yes, yes,
I was shocked by your story, and
yes.
it's remind me what happened it several years ago. Yeah.
Interesting. Yes. And I think, when we pose the question, because the phenomena doesn't give us any answers, it leaves more questions than answers, to be honest with you. It's like dealing with a minefield of what exactly are we dealing with? Where are they coming from? Why are we having all of these reports so varied within their descriptions and experiences. But the force does come on a physical level as well, very much a tangible physical level. If we take the instance for Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, for instance, and just giving a prime example, I think it was the Sherwood family, I think, that they were out on their property and that huge wolf came forward and then tried to, attack one of their calves. And when they shot at the wolf, the bit of flesh that came off it suddenly became very old, and the tracks to the beast, the wolf itself, just disappeared like into thin air. So there's obviously a composition that this force takes on in order to mold themselves within our reality on a physical level of integration. What form it actually represents beyond that, we don't know. But we do know that, there is some kind of secrecy or lid on this, and I think that the system that we serve is adamant in keeping that lid tight because it knows that the public will be, and I'm going to say this now, very frightened or not understanding that the system is not in control of this force or these forces that seem to operate within our dimension of reality, within our world. And this is the problem, I think, because we've all been sold the story that UFOs don't exist, that aliens don't exist, that ghosts don't exist, that there is no such thing as life after death, that it is all mere fantasy. But now that bag is getting a bigger hole in the bottom of it, yes. And it's all coming out now because people are scratching their heads thinking, hang on just a minute, you told us this, the system that we're supposed to, look up to, and it's supposed to protect us as citizens. You told us that this stuff isn't real, but it is real. So you've lied to me, but you'll see how the system we serve uses very clever psychological tactics, reverse psychology, to make us like we're all idiots, but then subtly coming in like, oh, well, we kind of accept that. You'll find this as well with a lot of famous people, most notably those within the scientific unit. They're willed out, and the one minute they're saying there's no such thing, and then of course when all this starts coming out, they come forward and say, oh, well, there could be a possibility, because all they're doing is bumping up their profiles and wanting to be popular, when in actual fact they know next to nothing about it. It's only people like you and all your good listeners, those like myself who are interested within the research application and trying to find out what this is. But you'll find that you just get buried, you get pushed to one side. And another part which is very, very sad within the UFO community is, unfortunately, there are those that want exclusive rights to the phenomena. Like, look at me, look what I've... No. The phenomena belongs to each and every one of us because we are part of this phenomena. Yes. That is the reality. That is the reality.
Yeah.
No matter which way you're forced to look at it, or and unfortunately, I have to say this, and it is true, there's a lot of nastiness within the UFO community because of differences of opinions.
Yes.
But I have always been open to all forms of speculation. Me and my twin brother, who is also a researcher and an author and an artist, my twin brother, we have always been accepting and open to other areas of research, of investigations, because we don't know what we're dealing with, but we have an idea when we're trying to put the pieces together or attach those connection links, as it were. So, and this is the sad thing. Other people will, put you down or try and bring you down if you're trying to bring a piece of work out. It's the same old. It's unfortunately human nature, but I don't see why that should be human nature. I think people should get on and be respectful of one another, even if they are different or they have differences of opinions or whatever. It doesn't matter.
We have question from Mr. Gatot in chat room. Good afternoon, Mr. Kinsella. Kind of interesting experience. I am curious about the alien gesture showing angry expression to you. Did the alien give some message to you and your brother hours or days after the encounter? Perhaps in dream or next encounter? Do you share your experience in some website or weblog?
The expression that the grey at the end gave me, the shocked look, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I think we covered that in terms of me being able to forcibly ask a question, because most abductees are not in control of the experience because their captors are very much in control, and hugely mentally so, because the greys are very influential in terms of our mental processing. They can control the mind, they can control what you want to see, they can control, even pull out your memories, they can even show your dead relatives on board the craft. That didn't happen with me, but you hear these accounts where a person is being abducted and the greys are bringing their deceased father or grandmother or mother on board the ship. They believe that there is a connection to be made. But I think that what the greys are doing is that they're wanting a reaction on an emotional level because they seem devoid of our emotional attributes. The question that I posed to that grey, I was so angry because of the violation, and not understanding what had happened in terms of why this had happened. So for me, I wanted answers. It's no different from someone being kidnapped and then kind of like almost being freed from it. You get past the shock part, but you're also angry, you know, because you're the complete injustice of what occurred. So I wanted to hit this grey. I wanted to smack him, you know, I wanted to really knock his lights out. I didn't care what he was. I wanted to hit him, but I couldn't move. I was frozen in terms of my movements, but I was able to attain my mental processing. And I thought, I'm going to ask you a question. You are going to tell me how I'm able to get through solid matter. And when you do that, I'm able then to inform the public how you're able to do that. And I think because of that direct line of questioning shocked him, like, we don't normally get this from abductees. We don't normally get this from anyone. And then kind of like scrambled and froze. But interesting what my brother was doing. So was the force beforehand starting to control certain events from their side? We don't know. That is very, very strange indeed. And as I said, we don't know. You know, there does seem to be a connection between what my brother had done when he went into the trance and said there's going to be an earthquake or grandma's going to die, and then what the grey was doing at the end when it was froze and looked up and then scrambled this language in a kind of like electronic rasp that sounded like the voice synthesizer to our ZX81 that we had many long years ago. An electronic rasp, the unintelligible rasp, made no sense whatsoever. And my brother made no sense, and the grey made no sense. So it looks like there was a scrambling of reality. We don't know why. We have no idea. But good question, yeah.
Okay, another question from Dwinanto Aribowo. When someone experiences the process of being abducted by an ET, such as your personal experience, where they feel like they are floating and being able to penetrate walls, this
Yes.
is like an near-death experience.
Correct.
Can it be concluded that the abduction by an ET is something we call a supernatural event?
Well, let's just say that they're obviously operating on an interdimensional level of reality. Our understanding of the near-death experience does prove the consciousness to survive beyond this realm when we experience physical death. This has been reported and registered with certain researchers into NDE studies now. The connection that I made back in 1996 is that when we look at the abduction phenomena, it seems to mirror the near-death experience. And let me give an example. When someone goes through an NDE, there is a sense of timelessness, of liberation. Communication is done through telepathy, and in a lot of cases, if their physical body has been diseased, when the consciousness or the soul of that person returns back to the body, there seems to be a correction within the energy field, and the person is normally healed and their life changed. Now, when an abduction takes place, whatever the greys do to that astral connection, which is a connection between you and them on their reality, when you're returned back to your body, you will invariably have the marks, because we've got to get away from this whole thing about, oh, it's because the soul and consciousness is wispy and ethereal and we can't touch it. Well, on varied levels, including near-death experience. When someone dies, that their new state of reality matches the one that they're in, and there is interaction between the two. And it's the same with the abduction phenomena. People assume that because we can't touch it, like the signals to your mobile phone network system, you can't see them, you can't touch them, you cannot destroy energy, but they are there. They carry information. And that's purely on a very limited technological level that we humans have developed. We are talking about something about consciousness, which is so far beyond our current level of understanding, and does seem and appears to survive the after-death experience. So in terms of that, I think we're looking at an interdimensional level of reality where they have to come in and lower their vibration rate, rather like your signal to your phone comes through the mechanism in order to translate its information from primary source to a source that we can understand through translation. So it is no different from that. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. There is a question from Dino Michael. Is there any difference between abduction in USA and abduction in UK?
That's a very, very, very good point. Wonderful question. No, I think, to be honest with you, that the abduction phenomena is slightly different for every individual. It's rather like, if I may just say here, if someone has an experience with a car crash, the experience with a car crash, God help them and God love them, is very different from one crash to another. The same with anything that you can speak about that is very multifaceted in terms of like experience. So I think that the overall reality of that is similar. Now, given an example here, which is interesting, you know of the 1961 Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Yes, right. Okay.
Yes.
Very famous case. Kathleen Marden is a wonderful lady. Know her, very, very connected with her work and her research. She's been very kind to me and my twin brother. Now, with Betty and Barney, there was the appearance of the UFO, which they saw through binoculars, and then everything seems to change because their encounter came through in dream state, in nightmares, as it were, within dream state. So there was an alteration in conscious awareness with regards to that experience, and we find this a lot within the abduction phenomena. Now, what's interesting is that after Betty's examination on board the craft, with her navel being explored and all the rest of it, Barney was obviously examined in a separate room. And the examiner came into the room where Betty was and the leader was, and the examiner came up to Betty and tried to remove her teeth. And the examiner couldn't work out how it was that Barney had dentures. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? Are you telling me that these beings came all the way from Zeta Reticuli to abduct a very sweet married couple, only to find out that Barney wore dentures? So this appears to be the first time that these beings had come across someone who had dentures. Now, don't you find that's very strange?
Yeah.
So if this is, where did these beings come from? This is the big question. And of course, what you find is that this interconnection or intergenerational link seems to be prevalent within certain people, within their families, and with regards to the abduction phenomena. Although we are aware that sometimes it skips a generation, rather like colored blindness does as well too. That skips a generation in terms of its connection link. But I think and feel that when you look at a lot of the majority of cases, there seems to be this kind of like alteration of conscious awareness, almost like a dreamlike quality to it. And where you're not in control of that, and then you come back. And I think this is the way that those intelligences are able to infiltrate our reality through this overriding of consciousness. Yeah.
And what do you think when the Grace who abduct someone and they tell that we are from Zeta Reticuli and we are maybe Sombrero Galaxy, but actually it is like interdimensional operation. Are they lying to us?
Well, we only have to look at the past with regards to that. And some very colourful characters that came out on the stage, most certainly back in the 70s, the 60s and 70s and 50s even. Some of them was like George Adamski and so on and so forth, where it was all very colourful with the Space Brothers and all these tall stories. And of course, we found that the description from these so-called apparent Space Brothers, so they come from Venus, and even further away from primarily the areas that they originally stated through the Space Brothers. So, I know that there's a lot of controversy surrounding these colorful characters who proclaimed these constant encounters with extraterrestrials, our Space Brothers, as it were, very shady areas. But there again, you will find that anyone that's involved within this research or have experiences do tend to lead someone down, some very strange avenues. And certainly, I think, in levels of those high strangeness. So I'm not so sure. I think and feel that it's possible that there are certain star systems that could harbor intelligent life. But the question is, I think they're from somewhere else. I think the Greys, and certainly a lot of the time, that people who experience these aliens or these monsters in terms of the werewolf, dogman, Sasquatch are lied to. I don't think there's any transparency to what's going on and where they come from. And if that was the case, we would have had some kind of awareness of where they actually are from. Some people believe that they're hiding in mountains. Well, where are they? Like the Dogman or the Sasquatch, or that they're under the earth. And that's another interesting theory as well with regards to the inner earth theory. Are they beneath our oceans? It's possible they have bases there. Are they inside the earth? That is very possible. We're not going to discount that theory. So, as I said, a lot of us researchers are left with no real transparency. We're just trying to pool our resources together to make those interconnections or those links to try and discover what it is that we're dealing with. And yes, it does give you a headache, primarily with trying to work out what is what, where is what, and how is what. I think for all of us, we sometimes find ourselves being moved from one thought to another, and going round in this proverbial circle, as it were. But I think that every single individual, every single one of you, are very important into the construction and the idealisms of what we may be dealing with. So I think that's very important, yeah.
Okay, maybe any question for participant?
He asked about UFOs in.
Oh yeah. What is your opinion, Mr. Philip, about UFO or alien in South America?
South
Why?
America.
Yeah, South America. Why the event of in South America is more aggressive than the other area or country?
Yes, absolutely, because we had the cases, didn't we, of those beings that appeared that were almost like devil-like, weren't they, in South America? We don't know. It's just very bizarre. And the geographical locations are very, very important. I know another very respected and well-known researcher called Paul Sinclair, who's done a lot of UFO and cryptozoological study here in England, especially up in Yorkshire. But it is interesting about the geographical locations, most notably. We don't know why. So, in terms of the aggressive nature of these beings, it seems to be prevalent, but we have to be careful because there's a lot within the community who see it all very differently. I mean, I had a chat with some Americans, and the lady was being abducted every night of the week and having love and light adventures. Where do we differentiate fact from fiction? how can we measure elements of the mind of consciousness when this kind of like force takes over? We can't. There's no way of measuring it. The only thing we can do is to make connections within certain patterns with, you know, if this is happening to one, then we're finding it happening to the other person. So like near-death experience, with abductions, we're finding these key connections that can, which seem to connect with one another, and saying, well, the experiences are real. But I don't know why certain geographical locations are more aggressive than others. We have no idea. But you can bet your bottom dollar there's a lot of secrecy attached to this from a military standpoint, and certainly in terms of corporate companies who are very shady in terms of their connection with UFO research, UFO recovery, and of course of extraterrestrial biological entities that appear to be within their possession.
Okay. So, okay. There is a question from Mr. Gatot. Any aliens encounter experience must be shocking for everyone, especially the first encounter. Do you feel kind of personality change or habits after the encounter? Maybe you can read or scan people personalities, more intuitive, feel super of something. And
Yes.
secondly, I hope you recognize some signs or characteristic of experience. I prefer use experience term than abductee. By Melinda Leslie. Do you find any similarity of each sign with your experience? Thank you.
Well, I will tell you that the experience was shocking and truly terrifying, no matter how someone tells you that you should have experienced it. There are people who've said to me, well, you know, you've gone through this because of your own good, and it's all for the good of you. Well, I don't believe that, because we have morals here as human beings. We have the good and the bad. We know and we can measure the good from the bad. If you were abducted, for instance, by someone and you were held hostage, that is a very different experience altogether. You know, you're taken by force, as it were. There was a transformation, most definitely, what I would call some type of metamorphosis. I found that I became psychic, or more psychic, more aware. So whether or not the experience itself had opened an area previously shut within my own consciousness, or the facilitation of mind had been opened further, is a questionable thing. But I did find myself becoming more psychic and more sensitive than I had been before. It had changed me, I think, to a degree like many other people, where you start to question reality. And this also begs the question, you know, if I didn't have this experience, maybe I would be one of these people that is locked in the material world and going round from 9 till 5, just getting on with life until I die and not questioning anything. So I think the majority of cases seems to overwhelm the individual and change that individual in asking these penultimate questions. So yes, the singularity seems to touch you, and then of course you're left with this question. Well, there's obviously more to what we are, and there's more to what they are, and the universe in which we live, there's more to this, but we're not being told anything. But it changes you, I think, in retrospect of how you view your reality. So yes, I did find myself becoming more psychic, more aware, more questioning of our reality, which most people aren't willing to do. They're quite happy to be caught within a 9 to 5 job. You live and you die, and everything is basic and simple. You know, no, what a nightmare.
Yes, yes, it's the first encounter always scary.
Yes,
For
absolutely, yes.
yeah,
It took me off guard completely, because you see, if there had been previous experiences, which I am in no way doubting with myself, they have been secreted. Indeed, there were events which do specifically point suspicion to the fact that I had, and my twin brother had, some other abductions, as it were, but I can't prove that, because as we are aware, the force is able to subjugate this experience deep within the subconscious mind, so it's hard to retrieve, I think.
and My question, Mr. Philip, um, do they still come to you? I mean, the alien, the abduction, or
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, our last sighting of UFOs had been on the 9th of April 2016 at precisely 11:15 p.m. at night. That case had been well documented. It's a long, um, uh, it's too long to explain here, but my niece had filmed them and they've been analysed as unknowns. No other researchers came forward. There were no aliens present then. It was just the visual encounter of these magnificent three white orbs that had been in a triangular formation very low above me and my brother when we returned from a meal and at the dead of night. The phenomena itself seemed to change the environment in terms of no one was around at 11:15 at night. During that time, no one was walking their dog or coming down from the pub or driving their car or bicycle. It was like it just changed, altered reality. So no, the 1989 event is the only one abduction event that I recall. There may, as I said, have been other events that may have taken place, but there were certainly some suspicious build-ups to them, but I have no memory of those.
okay. Maybe another question for participants. So, how many books you make about UFO?
Well, my brother and I had written children's books, science fiction, but in terms of the UFO subject, I have written, and the psychic phenomena. So I wrote a book called Reaching for the Divine, which is out of print now. The publishers brought that out in 2007. I wrote Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena, that was brought out in 2009. I also wrote a book called Sky Crash Throughout Time, which was a further investigation of the Rendlesham UFO event and the areas of high strangeness, that was written with the original researcher Brenda Butler, a very famous case that occurred here in 1980 with regards to the military troops. I then wrote A Passage to Eternity, The Enigma of the Dead, UFOs and Aliens, and also You, the Public Deceived, The Grand UFO Deception, and of course my latest, which is Terrestrial Trespassers, which has just been released. Although the publication date was last year, I was in a queue with other authors before it was actually published about a month ago, I think now. So I must admit, though, someone's jumped on the bandwagon and have you reviewed it on Amazon already and given me a sterling review. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it wasn't really, to be honest with you, but dear Lord Almighty, you're not allowed an opinion, and this is a thing within the UFO community, but it doesn't bother me anymore as long as the work's out there. So there's been a number of books about UFOs and UAPs, and also the psychic phenomena, exploring the psychic realm, the consciousness.
Okay. Mr. Dwinanto asks you this. You worked with Brenda Butler when
Yes.
compiling the book Sky Crash.
Yes.
What do you think about the mystery that occurred during the Rendlesham Forest incident?
Well, 1980 December, over the Christmas period, it really happened. I think that I've met Colonel Charles Holt when we were at a meal with him. And saw him lecture, and we had gone for a meal with him. He's a gentleman and very sharp of mind, absolutely a gentleman who knows his stuff. And what happened to him did happen. And I think that the phenomena seem to infiltrate the troops on an individual level of conscious awareness. We find this quite considerably. The same with Jim Peniston and Burroughs, who reported a fire within the forest to begin with, and then came across that very strange device that was reported by them that seemed to alter time or space as well. So yes, Brenda Butler is very much regarded within her own research. She had the event of 1980 was not the only event to occur. It was only because it was the military that this started to gain attention, and those in power tried to squash it. But there were UFO reports around Redemption long before the 1980 event and well after the event, as we know ourselves. Yeah, so that was quite interesting, and again opens up more questions and answers. But Brenda Butler was forefront within the research combination of that research, along with Jenny Randalls, who was head of B4 at the time, and Dot Street, who were linked with that UFO group at that time.
Okay, and there's a question about the purpose. Okay, Dino Michael asks, what the purpose of the creation of hybrid alien? Do you have any opinion?
Well, we could speculate as to that hypothesis, and I did that back in 1996 through the publication of Spirits in a Material World, which dealt with the greys and humans and the abduction phenomena. When we die, we come through a birthing cycle, the passage through the womb. And people believe in reincarnation and incarnation. I have no reason to doubt that whatsoever. I don't think we'll know the full facts until we return back to source, or the other side as they call it. A cloned civilization which cannot reproduce perhaps is outside of that processing of consciousness or recycling of the soul. Maybe they're wanting to reintroduce themselves back into that cycle because they are dead to the experience through their cloned experimentation. It could also be a possibility that the greys are interested in creating a new genus because the human species is and will be perhaps extinct, or we will wipe ourselves out, and they want to create a new genus, a new species to exist beyond and within perhaps another universe. This is another question that we have to use. Is there a possibility behind that? It obviously seems to be of importance to the greys. Most notably, it's vital to them of what they are doing. It would be lovely if we knew the answer to that, but we can only hypothesize as to that question. So maybe it's to benefit the greys themselves with their own program, or maybe it's a new species that's being created. And we have to take into consideration that we as a human species, our creation is still very much of a mystery. And I believe, and I've always believed, that there was some kind of antediluvian culture or intelligence that had infused themselves with the mammal, the hominid, to create our species. And this goes back into the antediluvian culture. So I'm not saying that the greys are our creators or our makers, but it's possible that they are part of that creation mythos. I think perhaps they're trying to find themselves through us, through our creators, who knows? A bit like Prometheus in the film, where they wanted to find out who was responsible in creating the engineers and so on and so forth, you know?
Yeah. So, uh, the question is, if the Greys interested with human, or maybe they want to make a hybrid,
Yes.
are they nice, or are they have hidden agenda?
Well, in terms of that, we're not sure. They seem very aggressive to a lot, not as the individual is children when they go through a childhood stage, humans, when they're abducted. The greys seem to be very nice or very pleasing or very connected to the individual. But when they become older, they seem more
Yeah.
aggressive. Terry Lovelace, Assistant Attorney General, that my brother and I know in America, wrote a book called The Devil's Den. Incident at Devil's Den, Incident at Devil's Den, where he and a buddy had been abducted, and it was quite horrifying. There was a change of time, of a need for them to treat them like they were just meat. So I think that what's interesting is that with this hybridization program, it's interesting that with the female abductee, the female is normally brought on board their ship so-called ship in order to bond or show love or attention to the hybrid, as though the Greys can't do that. That is a human quality. So there's obviously something essential in terms of this hybridization program, whether or not it is a part and parcel of the genus of the Greys from cloned into some type of reproductive organism. And when that dies, they're slingshotted back to where they wanted to come from. We don't know. The same with us. When we pass, we return to source, we believe, through this recycling of the soul through incarnation and reincarnation. So that is a possibility to think about, most definitely. But we're not sure. But there is obviously a reason. I know that also I met Dr. David Jacobs. I met him in America, and his belief is that they are here on Earth and wanted to take over. You know, with regards, we don't know who they are and what they are, and it would be hard for us to know if they're alien or not. That's a fascinating speculation, but one, again, we can't prove. And when you get these regressionists in different areas, whether it be Dr. John Mack or Dr. David Jacobs or whoever, when they link with their clients, all of those clients seem to have a different, with the researcher, take on it. So Dr. John Mack, who's deceased now, all of his saw the love and light. Dr. David Jacobs, all of his patients saw the rather nefarious side to it. So is the phenomena working through even the researchers, you understand?
Yeah.
Is that force operating through them to make them see it in a different way? We don't know.
I see. So, okay, maybe this is one last question from Karina Indra. Could you conclude if the gift, such as psychic abilities, clairvoyance, remote viewing, are derived from the aliens?
That is a very good question. As I stated before, you know, after my experience, there was an awareness of the psyche or a component of clairvoyance, as it were. And I found myself wanting to explore this area because I knew that with regards to ufology, there was much more attached to it, because the phenomena seem to operate on these interdimensional levels of reality. So I think to some degree, are we gifted because of this? Does that mean that we have allegiance to these alternative forces? Perhaps. I am not dismissing that one bit, because it's in hindsight, if I had not gone through the experience, I may have been a very different person in terms of how I view reality. So this, we have to be very careful, because this kind of like highlights certain areas of, well, you need to be in appraising these beings, or you're dead against them. You know, which way do we look at it? I went through the experience, it changed me. Whether or not that was through my own wanting to change, whether or not they were part of that experience. As I said before, it's rather like someone going through a car crash or an abduction experience with human. It changes you. I think the way you view things afterwards gives you a much greater capacity of empathy, of understanding that you survived the journey, that you got through it. And that in some respects does change someone. You know, it's like someone going through illness and recovering, coming out the other end, and they're so grateful. They're more empathic, more understanding of what it means to be well. So I don't know. I can't answer that, but I will state, I think the wonderful person who asked that question is correct. I think that in some way the experience changed me.
And here is the newest of Mr. Philip Kinsella books, Terrestrial Trespassers, and you can buy the book in Amazon. Okay, so it is not just about Gray's alien, but also the story of how Mr. Philip Kinsella faced the first encounter, and
yes,
one of still make me think that this phenomena is very intelligent, when you once again said to your mother, "I saw UFO," and when your mother saw the sky, it's just an aircraft, just airplane, not
Yes,
X-shaped UFO. That is very intelligent of the phenomenon. This phenomenon.
yes. It's almost laughable, almost as if the phenomena likes to alter reality, change it.
Yes.
As though, and you get those experiences where there could be three people and only two people will observe the UFO and the third person will see nothing. So this is why we're looking at this integration of consciousness where the phenomena is able to forcibly attach itself, rather like a hitchhiker, I suppose, effect, which those at Skinwalker Ranch also experienced with the phenomena, as you're very much aware of. I think the same applies to us, that once you are touched by this singularity, you're marked, so to speak. So there's obviously a change within the auric energy field or your energy field, where this phenomena can see you much clearer or a connection with than those that have not. So this is interesting speculation, most definitely,
Yes.
in terms of how the phenomena presents itself, how it morphs itself into our reality, and why it is that you are singled out rather than, A, B, or C, whoever they are, who don't seem to experience that. That is a very good point and a valid point, and one that we're still puzzled by. So there's obviously, and we have to be careful because people say, oh, it's because I'm special. No, we are each of us special, whether or not you've had an experience or not. Your place here within this time, within this existence, is as unique as anyone else's, whether or not you're the man with the can or the king with the crown. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, famous or not, it doesn't matter. But it's interesting to see why it is that certain individuals are selected, in terms of what they want, what this force wants. Interesting, very much, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Philip Kinsella. But can I ask you just short question?
Of course.
What do you think about these aliens? Are they demon or not?
That is a very good point, and one which opens up a can of huge speculation and differences within the UFO community. We have to, I say here, we have to be very careful, but why not? As I said before, there are differences of dimensions of reality. We hear about the 7 levels within hell to heaven,
Yeah.
the damnation of souls, the corrupt. And when we look at the greys, it has been noted that they do seem to form some kind of simplified embryonic formation of what a baby would look like, except a little bit more developed. Are we seeing something that's stagnant within its own evolution and is trying to find its way back through the process of incarnation and reincarnation? And it has found us a way physically to interact with us within our realm. We don't know. But if you look at many of the cases of the Virginia case where, a young officer died through handling one of these beings when he come into contact with it. And you hear these cases of cattle mutilation and human mutilation as well, which we are not there to shy from. They have actually happened. And I think a lot of the cases are buried or silenced, most notably with regards to the human mutilations. So who knows? As I said, we have to be open to all forms of speculation because not one of us knows what we're dealing with. And that's why all of us are trying to pool our resources and our know-how in trying to bring it all together to try and establish what it is that we're dealing with. We just don't know, but we have to be open to that speculation, most definitely, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Philip Kinsella. And maybe we can take a picture together with participant. Maybe all of you can open your camera so I can take a screenshot from this Zoom.
Well, I have to thank all of you very much indeed. Well, as I said, we're all important. All of you are part of this. Your thoughts, your theories, your ideas are just as relevant as mine. Just because I have had these experiences does not in any way make me special. As I said before, I am looking for those answers and now within theoretical content. I may have been very honored to have come up with a few theoretical contents which were considered revolutionary back in the day, but we are still no nearer in forefronting that science of the mind or consciousness or alternative dimensions of reality. So all of you are just as important and key components as I am. So I think it's wonderful that you've all come together, and I have to thank each and every one of you for being of assistance in terms of this most perplexing and provocative subject matter. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you. And Godspeed. And it's so wonderful to connect with all of you in Indonesia. It's the first time I've been able to speak within your great country, and I'm very honored indeed. So I'm very grateful to all of you for taking the time out to listen to my ramblings and for us to become friends, as it were. And it's very nice. I'm very touched and very honored. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So maybe all of you can open your camera and we will take a picture with Mr. Philip Kinsella. Okay, please open your camera. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you.
And smile, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, and have a good day. And very honored to be connected with all of you fine people. Please believe in yourself, stay safe, and always, know that there is more to you than what we're told. You understand?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Philip Kinsella, and have a good day. Thank you.
And you as well. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.